Hello, Namaskar, and welcome to the CAA Show. CAA, as all of you know, is Conversations and Analysis, and my name is Juggi Bhasin. They say that uncertainty is the only certainty in life. And if we go literally by that particular saying, then Modi 3.0 is a very near certainty in the present 2024 general elections. But what if? What if the I.N.D.I.A alliance were to come to power? What if the Congress party, which is the main party in the I.N.D.I.A alliance, if it comes to power? What could happen then? Would the scenario change? Would things change for us? I have been talking to a number of people, especially people like me, people like us, middle class people, people of our backgrounds, tax paying people, hard working people, and the scenario which comes out is truly, truly frightening. People are extremely skeptical, people are extremely anxious. Supposing if the India alliance were to come to power, people feel that everything could change for them. The way of life which they are experiencing now, or at least they have been experiencing for the last 10 years, could drastically change. That is what people at large think. It almost sounds like as if you're watching a Hollywood movie, and in those Hollywood movies, movies like The Day After, The Day Tomorrow, a nuclear strike happens, and what happens the day after? Whatever towns, cities, villages are left, and people are left, and how do they cope with their lives? Something drastic on that level is what people think could happen if Modi 3.0 doesn't happen and the I.N.D.I.A line comes to power, and especially the Congress party comes to power. And that got me thinking. And that's the topic of this particular podcast also. It got me thinking that are these fears because of the election rhetoric, or the rhetoric which we have heard, all of us have heard during this electoral cycle? All this talk of Mangal Sutras, redistribution of wealth, some would say it is a lot of fear mongering. And is it because our minds are biased because of all this talk? Or are there really tangible reasons where people need to be a little careful, where people need to be afraid? They need to watch out what could be coming for them. As usual, I will not be taking sides, but I will give you a few points, a few tangible points, I think, that assuming if the Congress comes to power, if the I.N.D.I.A alliance comes to power, then what all changes could be in the offing, what all things could happen, and why perhaps maybe there is some element of reality in that people are feeling spooked. Maybe their fears are real. Maybe they have a point there. I'll give you my reasons for that. And so let's get started, and starting of course with the number one major point, that is the economy. What is going to happen to the economy? What is going to happen to the way we are spending now, the way we are living our lives, the way we travel, the way our jobs are at the moment, our entire lifestyle? Let's talk a little bit about that in the economic bracket and understand what changes could take place. So I'll start by saying that if you compare the Congress party, I'm specifically talking of the Congress here, and I don't mean this in a derogatory sense, what I'm going to say next. I mean it in a very polite sense. I'm comparing it with the snake, for instance. The snake actually is a very important animal in the habitat. Supposing if you compare with the Congress with the snake, for instance, and if the snake shed its skin, which it did at least on 2 or 3 occasions. If you remember UPA 1, UPA 2, and even the Narasimha Rao government when Dr. Manmohan Singh was a finance minister, during those times, the same Congress party had initiated major reforms. In fact, all the reforms in the country were actually, to that extent, the credit has to go to the Congress party. They were initiated by Narasimha Rao and by his finance minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh. So the snake, the socialistic Congress snake, had shed its skin, at least on those 2 or 3 occasions. But again, after shedding skin, the snake went back to being its old socialistic self. That actually a lot of people don't understand, but that actually is the true nature of the Congress party. And it goes right back to the days when Nehru used to be, he used to be, I think, in one of these UK colleges, and he had imbibed the ideals of Fabian socialism. It goes back right to that point in time. The socialistic strain in the Congress party is part of its DNA. It is part of its character. And once in a while, it might shed skin. It might look that it might support industrialists and wealth creators. But by and large, it is a socialistic streak. And today, under Rahul Gandhi, even though he does not occupy any official position in the Congress party, but we all know he runs the party really, under Rahul Gandhi and in the background Sonia Gandhi, the Congress is, I would say, a cross between socialistic and communistic. It is a party which is like, in its socialistic sense, today more diehard than it has ever been, even more so when it was under Indira Gandhi. And therefore, to that extent, if we account for Kharge also, because he's after all the Congress president, under Kharge and Rahul Gandhi, the party is on a different level altogether in terms of its socialistic streak. And that, what does it really mean for the common man? And I'll talk about that, but also understand this thing, that it's not only Rahul Gandhi, or it's not only Kharge or Sonia Gandhi, even the advisors of the Congress party, the internationally well-known advisors, people like Raghuram Rajan, for instance, or even the infamous Sam Petroda, all these people have been advocating a strain of socialistic policies which has become the guiding light of the Congress party. And in that capacity, if they come to power, there is no question that they will reverse what this rhetoric, they will reverse these policies and go back to some BJP kind of reform policies. That is not going to happen. They will continue with what they have promised, and then life definitely could change for us completely. But just wait a minute, I'll talk about how life could change. But before that, I need to do something more important, and that is because we need to understand that. We have to put this in a context. We need to very quickly understand the compulsions of Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi, that why they are advocating this line of thought, this socialistic, communistic line of thought. We need to understand that. Let's talk first of Sonia Gandhi. A lot of people need to first understand that Sonia Gandhi is actually a child of the 1960s and 70s socialistic movement which was engulfing Europe during that particular time. I'm not entirely so sure where she was studying. Maybe it was at Cambridge or Oxford, where she met her future husband Rajiv. But if reports are to go by, if we study a little bit of history, then we will know that she was heavily influenced by the socialistic movement of that era. So the socialistic DNA, socialistic orientation had been there in Sonia Gandhi even at that particular point in time. But the thing to note is that she was heavily influenced by Indira Gandhi when she married into the Gandhi household and, came into India. All her thought processes, her demeanor, I would say, the way she approaches financial matters, the way she approaches social factors, the way she approaches society as a general, even India as a country, are guided by what Indira Gandhi was during her tenure. There is no question about that. And as we all know, Indira Gandhi was associated with the Garibi Hatao movement, and this Garibi Hatao thing, actually, in reality, it was just a call. It was just a call for removal of poverty, nationalization of banks, and all that which followed. But in reality, Garibi was never hataoed Garibi or poverty never went away, rather it increased. In fact, the rich only became richer, but the poor actually never got any relief. But Sonia Gandhi is a product of that time, of that era, and she continues, and for her, actually, in a certain sense, the world has stopped, and she continues with the legacy of Indira Gandhi even today, even till this day. And as we all know, especially it was very prominent during UPA 2 when she set up her own council, which worked as a kind of a kitchen cabinet, a kind of an alternative cabinet to Dr. Manmohan Singh. And she was calling the shots, especially on policy and economic matters. So that's Sonia Gandhi for you. And Rahul Gandhi is a chip of the old block. There's a lot of gossip, there are a lot of conjectures that Rahul Gandhi and Sonia Gandhi might have differences, etc. I don't think so. I think so he's completely guided by his mother. He has imbibed all this training, this kind of thought from Sonia Gandhi. And in his case, it has gone a step further. He actually today is surrounded both nationally and internationally by people who are hard left. They're not soft left, they're hard left, socialistic people. And therefore, all this talk of redistribution of wealth, all the talk of inheritance tax is real. This is not made up. This is not something which has just come out of nowhere. This has come out of a lot of thinking. And Rahul Gandhi is guided by that, or rather, he believes in that. He is convinced by all that. And also, please remember that both Rahul Gandhi and Sonia Gandhi are great believers in legacy. And really, what is the legacy of the Congress Party? The legacy of the Congress Party is socialism. That, in one word, to my mind, is the legacy of the Congress Party. And both of them ardently believe in that. And therefore, in conclusion, one would say that making wealth, creating wealth, is a kind of a dirty word in the vocabulary of such people. People who create wealth, people who are industrialists, people who are looked upon with suspicion by such people. And therefore, in this socialistic order, there could be redistribution of wealth. I'm not saying that it will never happen. It could certainly happen. They're trying something like that in Karnataka and in Telangana. I'll talk a little bit about that also. But one thing is very sure. The poor might benefit from it or not. To my mind, it won't happen. The poor will only get poorer. But the people at the top, the decision makers at the top, the creamy layer at the top, they will certainly benefit, they will certainly thrive. And that's old style socialism for you, with the people, the decision makers, the people who control the levers of power. They actually do very well for themselves. They live the best of lives, while the people at the bottom, they don't do. Now, assuming, and as again I'm saying, and I'm using the caveat that the Congress comes to power and these policies are implemented, what is going to happen? I could go into great details about that, but in 2 or 3 sentences, let it suffice and let it say that 2 or 3 major things are going to happen. The entire impetus to create wealth, the entire force for people to come up from below and go up the ladder quickly and sit at the high table with the people who are already there. The entire motivation for startups, for instance, or the entire motivation to innovate, the entire motivation to create wealth, to improve your standard of living, that entire impetus will completely go out of the window. That will not be encouraged, that will in fact be discouraged. Infrastructure will collapse. Why will infrastructure collapse? When we talk of infrastructure, we are talking of trains, we are talking of airports, we are talking of highways, we are talking of roads, we are talking of public work, developmental projects. All that will collapse for a very simple reason. Because all the money will be pumped into the freebies which have been promised by the socialistic governments, like for instance what the Congress government has promised in Karnataka. And I believe to some extent they are trying to do it desperately. Those free rides we have been hearing about in the buses for women, it is going on, even though that entire bus network now is close to collapse. What is really going to happen is all the money will go into the freebies, all the direct transfer benefits which you have promised to people or to the unemployed youth, for instance. If that starts happening, then there'll be no money left for infrastructure development. Infrastructure will collapse, as we can already see happening in Karnataka, for instance, where Bangalore city is going from bad to worse. It'll start happening in Telangana also. And all those other state governments where the Congress is in power, the same cycle will occur. And that is what people like us, that is the middle class, is worried about, that soon it'll be our turn, people who are living in Delhi, Bombay, Kolkata, Chennai, other places, if the I.N.D.I.A lands or if the Congress comes to power, because there is no money really left for developmental works. There's only money left to give free money to the so-called poor, as we keep saying, to certain segments of society which you particularly favor, to certain castes which you favor. And only people at the top, as I said, will thrive. So, when such a situation happens, then obviously there is social unrest, there is a hue and cry, people are dissatisfied, people are angry, and then what happens is the counter reaction starts, because please remember on the job fronts also, and the irony would be that if the Congress were to come back, they would obviously come back on the plank that, oh, we will create millions of jobs for people because unemployment had been an issue during the BJP government's tenure. And therefore they would come on that promise. But in reality, what's going to really happen is that all the jobs in the private sector will shrink. Yes, there will be artificial creation of jobs in the public sector, in the government. Only those sectors will thrive, as they used to do in the 1970s when Indira Gandhi was in power. And therefore there was a lot of social unrest, because obviously everybody can't get a government job. That's not possible. And a lot of young listeners, a lot of young viewers, I would like to tell them that during the 1970s, I think it was in 1971, that the government then, the Indira Gandhi government, was forced to bring in a law then called MISA, or the Maintenance of Internal Security Act, which was precisely brought in with emergency powers to curtail civic and social unrest, because it was so completely out of hand. And that obviously happens when socialistic policies are practiced. There is so much dissatisfaction, jobs completely dry up, and only certain people, the government bureaucrats, only they are making merry, nobody else. And that precisely could happen if the Congress comes to power. Social unrest on a wide scale, cities will collapse, infrastructure will be completely finished. And the ripple effects will not only stop within the country, then they will go beyond your borders. That's the next thing which is going to happen. Today, for the first time in the last 10 years, I can say that after a long, long time, vis-a-vis our traditional adversaries, that is China and Pakistan, today we are in a much, much better position. Pakistan actually has been reduced with a begging bowl. It is going around with a begging bowl all over the world. And China also, in this classic standoff which is happening in the Himalayas, the Chinese armed forces have been held at bay. They see the might of the Indian forces. All this has happened in the last 10 years. But assuming if the Congress comes back to power, the first thing that these people will do is that they will try and kind of improve so-called relationships with Pakistan, with China also. Border infrastructure, border roads will stop. All that work will stop. Compromises will be reached, underhand deals will be reached with the Chinese and the Pakistanis. And it would be like a great betrayal. And that's the last point, a couple of last points which I'd like to talk about, that when a society progresses, when a middle class is on its way up, as it has been happening during the last 10 years, then we are, because middle class people, they all pay their taxes. They are all contributing to the nation's economy. They are all spending. They are great consumers also. And therefore, the economy is thriving. And they are on their way up. But once the confidence of the middle class is shaken by these policies, a couple of things happen. The middle class needs what is called an outside element and inspiration to keep on going. And the inspiration in the last 10 years has been nationalism, a sense of national unity. You can call it by the concept of Bharat Mata, you can call it the Vande Mataram, you can call it whatever. But there is a larger inspiration where we all say that we are paying our taxes, we are doing well in our lives, we are working, we are prospering, we are traveling within the country or outside the country, and we therefore believe in the nation state. India is not a union of states, but rather India is a nation state. But if nationalism under the Congress is taken out as a impetus, as a force, as a powerful tool, then what is going to happen is that people will lose confidence in terms of identity in who we are. And not only within the country, not only vis-a-vis China and Pakistan, but internationally also, because today, if you ask ordinary middle class Indians, that when you go outside the country, when you go abroad, are you respected? Do people take you seriously because you're Indian? And the short answer is yes, absolutely. Today, we are taken far more seriously. We are looked upon as a people, as an IT superpower. We are looked upon as a people as a country which is doing very well under Modi. We are looked upon as a hard-working, disciplined people. Unlike so many other migrant communities in the world, we are looked upon with a lot of favor. People want Indians to come and work. All that confidence which we have acquired, all that when we walk the streets of Western countries, we hold our heads high, all that will go. And this is not something which I'm just making up or I'm telling to you. These are real fears which people feel, that tomorrow if the I.N.D.I.A lands or the Congress would come to power, all these concepts of self-sufficiency, of make in India, of confidence from within, of our defense exports, of today look at exports, for instance. We are projected to almost do exports of almost $1 trillion in the next few years. We have already reached close to around, I think, $800 billion. That kind of exports are thriving. IT superpower, as I said, all that collapse is going to happen. And added with that collapse is the internal collapse, which means cities are going to collapse, infrastructure is going to slow down. The only thing which will be happening will be government jobs, and your entire identity at that time will then be determined, will be based on your birth, on your caste, because these are what are the policies which are being spoken about by the I.N.D.I.A Alliance, by the Congress Alliance. So, in other words, in short, just to conclude, we could be back in 2024, 2025, back to the 1970s, because I have been a child of the 70s. I have seen that era with my own eyes, and I can tell you that there is nothing romantic about the era. It was a time of scarcity. It was a time of need. I still remember as a kid, I used to go and stand in a line in front of the milk booth. They used to be called DMS, Delhi Milk Scheme. We used to have these cards which used to be given, and used to get tokens for getting milk. Milk used to be in short supply. When summers used to come, something as basic as paneer, which we all eat, a lot of vegetarians eat paneer, that used to go out. There would be no paneer production in the country because milk used to be in short supply. It was a time of scarcity. It was a time of short supplies. the body, people would not get adequate proteins. That was not available. It was a complete time of scarcity, and we could be back to that era of the 70s. It's great to think of, what a lot of the people in this alliance, a lot of the Congress party people are doing is that they are dangling these baits of that we will give you close to 1 lakh a year, 8,500 rupees per month. It is, of course, very tempting for a person who's at the bottom of the ladder. No question about it. I agree with that. But if you take that bait, if you swallow that bait, then hell will follow after that. Not only for the middle class people like you and me, but even for those poor people, because the poor, I can tell you, will only become poorer. That, unfortunately, could happen. That, unfortunately, those fears of people are very, very real. They could realize if the Congress comes to power, and by all means, it is now abundantly clear that these are not just dire warnings or this is just election rhetoric. The fact is that when you look at a leader like Rahul Gandhi, for instance, and then you get this impression and then you walk away from listening to him, is that this is a man who is exactly going to do what he is saying. He is not pretending to do that. And if that happens, well, as I said, the scenario is very dismal, very dark, and we could be back to the 1970s. So it's always good, as I say, to understand what could happen if something else were to happen, which is unexpected. We have talked about it in this episode. Let's just hope it never comes down to that. But it's always good to be prepared. It's always good to know, because information is king. Information is power. And so on this note, I come to the end of this episode of the CAA show. I hope you really like this episode. And as I keep saying, do become our subscribers. Press on that red button, become a subscriber. Subscription is, of course, completely free. And my promise is, we bring you the hot button issues of the day, always with a twist, with new ideas. Goodbye and cheers from my end.